what I would like for you to do right now is kind of imagine a room. Imagine an empty room. In my mind, it's kind of like a white room. There's no colors or anything. It's just a big room, and there's one door, and you are the room. So the room, that is the void, that is the beingness that I'm talking about. That you are the room, you are the void, and within that void, within that room, everything is present. There's nothing in it, and by nothing being in it, everything is present, everything is there, because nothing is left out. As soon as something is there, other things are left out. So in the nothingness, everything is present. You are that room. And then a door opens and a feeling comes into the room. It might be a feeling of anger, let's say. That feeling of anger comes into the room. The feeling of anger does not change the room. It's just a feeling of anger being present in the room, and that feeling of anger will depart again. It will arise and it will cease. And that hasn't changed anything about the room. The room is still there. It's like a guest coming in through the door, and the guest is not changing anything about the room. Even if the guest starts to paint on the walls, it doesn't change the room, and doesn't change the void within the room, because there's now just a color on the wall. It doesn't change anything about the room whatsoever. And it's like that with you and feelings, that you can actually, and that's where you can do this in meditation, that you experience yourself as the room, you experience yourself as the void, and a feeling might arise. And then you allow that feeling to be there. You allow anger to arise, or you allow resentment to arise. And whatever is arising, it's just arising. You can observe it and be with it and have no need for it to disappear. And you don't need it to disappear, because it will disappear by itself again. Just like when you feel joy, you have no need to cling for it to stay there. It will disappear again. And I just want to say short, I'm going to make a video about that too. I'm going to say short about the clinging when we have some, because we tend to do that in our lives. In the biological being that we are, we're very much aware about impermanence, very much aware that things arise and things disappear. So when happiness arises in us, we want to hold on to that, cling to that, for it not to disappear, which is an illusion. It will disappear. Everything disappears and everything arises again. So when anger happens or resentment happens, you don't want that feeling, then we have a resistance towards it. And we don't want that to be there. That doesn't make it go away. It's still there. But in that resistance that we have towards it, we make an identification with it. So we identify with the feeling of anger arising and saying, I am angry. And then all of a sudden, we have a shift in us happening. And we go from being the authentic that has the unconditional acceptance of what is, into the ego that does not want anger to be present. I do not want to be angry. And that is when we're, what I usually talk about, in the maze, where we are completely overwhelmed by all the feeling that we feel, instead of being on the fifth floor as the observer and just observing what is happening, because it's not happening to you. So when you have I am feeling sad, there's an identifying happening with the feeling of sadness. And then you start to build on top of that. Why am I feeling sad? How can I make this go away so I'm not feeling sad anymore? And that is actually what is creating the problems in our lives, is that we try to find solutions for something that is not even real. I feel so sad right now. How can I avoid feeling sad so I become happy again? Then all of a sudden we're identifying with the feeling of sadness and with the wanting of being happy. And that is the illusion. So the real question when you're asking somebody, I'm so confused about this non-duality, I do not understand how all this is, it makes no sense to me whatsoever. The answer is not, there's no you to be confused. That's not the answer. That's unfair and not very kind. What I would suggest is that okay, great. I mean, the feeling of confusion has arrived. Could you be with that feeling of confusion? Can you be in a body that is super, super confused right now without trying to change it, but just being the room, being the void where the feeling of confusion has arisen? Can you be that room? Can you be present with the feeling of confusion? No, I can't. I don't want to be confused anymore. That's completely fine. It's completely fine. Don't change it. Can you be with a resistance to the feeling of being confused? Can you accept that right now you are in a physical body and you don't want to have the feeling that is there? It's still there, but can you accept that you do not want what is right now? And that is actually easier. That is the unconditional acceptance to what is. So then you are the room, you are the void, and you have a feeling of confusion entering the door. You do not want it to enter the door, but you can accept that it has entered the door. At some point, you will feel that that resistance to that is dissolving, which means that all of a sudden you can be the room. A feeling of confusion has entered the door, and you can be the room with the feeling of confusion present. At some point, that feeling of confusion will depart. It will cease to exist. And another feeling is coming into the door. It might be a feeling of relief. Now you understand it. So a feeling of relief comes in through the door. Can you be with that and not identify with that? Not going like, oh, I'm so happy. Now I finally understood it. Because then you're identifying with the feeling. You can't do that. You need to be aware of there's no you to identify with anything. As soon as you identify with a feeling that is present in you, then you make it into something that it's not. And that is what the illusion is. It's not that the feeling is arising, because a feeling of confusion is chemical. A feeling of release and relief is chemical. And it's beyond your control. You can't control your thoughts at all. So whatever thought is arising, whatever thought is disappearing, you can't decide for it to arise or disappear. It just happens.